Hey everybody, welcome back to a new video on my channel. And if you've seen this error message here anytime before and wondered what's going on here, no worries, it all got better in Vue 3.4. So let's have a look at the newest Vue feature that nobody talks about. And PS, there's a raffle on the end. So let's go. So most of you knew already, Vue 3.4 finally was released after a few beta rounds, and it came out with a nice blog post on the 28th of December last year, or whenever you watch this, right, 2023. And they're amazing features, but we only talk about one thing today. We won't talk about the new defineModel macro, which finally went stable, amazing, but not the topic of this video. We won't talk about the 2 times faster single file component parser or the more efficient reactivity system, and also not about the vbind shorthand. These are all really good things, maybe even deserve their own video, but not now, not here. We will focus on the error message you've seen before, on improved hydration errors. Because that message, well, yeah, I know it can freak people out, especially if you don't build plain SPA, but use server-side rendering, which is where hydration comes into play. So I've even wrote a blog post about that like a couple of years ago about Vue 2. The same still applies to Vue 3, but luckily with Vue 3.4, it will be way easier to squash these nasty hydration errors. Let's have a look at the demo application as usual to figure out how it was before in Vue 3.3, how it is now, and what these hydration errors actually are. As usual, I have a very tiny demo application prepared here, and just mentioned before. And what's happening is that there will be a few random characters for a link generated down here. So in line 25, we just use some characters from over here, generate some link paths that we eventually want to render. And throughout these functions, okay, generate one link, generate multiple links, and then set it as a value for a ref, for that list ref. And this all happens in that script setup block. And in here, in that list elements, we render the Nuxt links. So the idea is that we just render 10 random links, and that's it. But maybe some of you have already spotted it. There might be an issue, and we'll check out the browser and see what it actually is. When we load our application, we'll have a look on the HTML document that was loaded, and oh well, weird. There was some kind of flash here, some information change. When we look at the console, we see this dreaded error message, hydration completed, but contains mismatches. And once again, this is the demo application with Vue 3.3, so this is not how it is right now, but just if you haven't noticed it before, that's how it was before. And what's happening here exactly? Well, we've seen this flash of information. That's actually the thing. If we take a look at the server response here that comes from a Nuxt application, because hydration errors are only relevant in SSR, as I mentioned before, we see that the first entry, the link here starts with ZK8RAY, but on the client it's D1TG and so on, so on. So the information doesn't add up. And thus, we have this error here. And that's actually the main reason why there are hydration mismatches and errors, because the client expects different information from the server. In our case, the reason is the randomness, because we call that generate random links function twice, once on the server side and once on the client side, because the script setup is executed on both sides, right? As the create or before created method in Vue 2. Well, the randomness is not really predictable, because obviously it's randomness, so the client ends up with other values than the server. That's the reason why we get these hydration mismatches. But now think of a huge application with like hundreds of components, and you might wonder like, okay, which component is it? What is causing that issue? Why is it there? So based on the browser message we've seen before, we can't really figure it out, right? Just because of that hydration completed but contains mismatches? No, not really possible. And luckily, this changed in Vue 3.4, so let's update the dependencies and have a look how the hydration message changed now. Very important, I only changed the Vue version, I won't change the code, so let's see how that looks like now. So if we load the page again, we also see that hydration completed but contains mismatches, warning, or not warning, it's an error actually, than before, but we see way more, finally. Nice. So now we see hydration text mismatch in, and then we see the actual DOM element where it happens. So that helps a lot and doesn't tell us which component exactly yet, but it tells us where it's rendered. So this anchor tag here is rendered on the server, 16 MP and so on, and on the client is expected 1 E, H, N and so on. And after that, we see add Nuxt link, which is exactly the component we've rendered. So now it's way easier to track down these scenarios. And the best part is, usually hydration errors are tricky to track down in dev mode because sometimes they only appear in production because of certain conditions, caching and so on and so on. And before, there was no way to enable these hydration warnings or mismatch warnings, errors in production. But thanks to a compile time flag in Vue, this is now super easy and even easier in Nuxt because there you just have to set debug to true in your Nuxt config to get these sweet hydration mismatch warnings and errors in your staging or QA environment. So thanks to Vue 3.4, we had a blast.
I'm having a blast, yo.
But that's not it. That's not all. There's one more thing. After a few new hydration issues, because Vue also checks attributes now, there were a few things that came up. Some were false positives from Vue that were fixed in, well, blazing fast time. I also reported some of these. And some are actually issues with UI libraries. Well, kind of. Because UI libraries somehow need an own ID per element, right? Could be Headless UI from Tailwind, Nuxt UI, Radix Vue, and so on, lots of. The problem is that Vue does not provide some kind of useId composable to create a unique ID and also make sure that it's available on the server and the client side. Such a useId composable is useful for lots of implementations, not only for library authors, and was thus also proposed already back in September 2023 for Nuxt. But there's another issue with that. It's nice if Nuxt can solve that, but ideally this should be solved in Vue itself. So the Vue can provide a way so library authors don't have to support Nuxt and maybe other Vue SSR options like with the Vite SSR plugin and so on. But good news. This was proposed in Vue for way longer, some kind of useId hook as an RFC. And lots of thumbs up, of course, also from myself. Daniel Rowe from the Nuxt team also provided the vbind once alternative here that works on the server and the client with hydration, which is a nice option, but ideally we would have something that comes from Vue itself. And the good part is that just a few hours ago before recording that, Avenue actually confirmed that. Actually, Evan said it's planned for version 3.5 on Twitter. Also, link to that and all the links here in the description as usual. So that means after we now discovered, okay, there are some hydration errors, for example, with Headless UI, as I mentioned, but other libraries, and that shouldn't be like that, right? It's just something that we never noticed because these hydration errors, well, the attribute checks especially, they were very expensive and they weren't done like that, but now they're there. There were some things that were undiscovered. Also because it just worked before, right? More or less by, let's say, coincidence. It was never a big thing, but now, finally, there's the push to use ID function, or however it will be called eventually, that works for the whole ecosystem. So, basically, another win for that. And that's a very quick summary about Vue 3.4's feature nobody talks about, but which will help a lot, especially in big applications with possibly some hydration errors. And if you don't know exactly what hydration is, as I suggested, the blog post I wrote is still kind of up to date, but I will also revamp that in a bit. And there's another chance to catch that at a conference that's coming up very soon at the end of February, which is Vue.js Amsterdam. It is an amazing conference. Our Nuxt and Avenue will be there in person. Lots of people from the Vue and Nuxt core teams as well, library authors and so on. And there will be breathtaking talks from so many talented speakers and friends as well. And I have the honor to also be there and talk about Vue.js hydration. So in case you want to know more about that and don't want to wait on the updated blog post, then that's your chance. There it is. And luckily, I have the honor to raffle away one single ticket for Vue.js Amsterdam this year.
Okay.
Whoa.
So in case you're interested, just drop down a comment below and say why you'd love to go to Vue.js Amsterdam. And as a little extra, what is the most amazing thing you've built so far with Vue or Nuxt? Feel free to write your tech stack, what it is about, and so on, get creative. And in the next video, I will announce the winner of that one ticket for Vue.js Amsterdam 2024. All right, amazing. That's it. We're done. Best of success, fingers crossed, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy hacking, folks.